I am.
Okay, so I will start us off. Hello, and thank you all for joining us for our webinar series, Residency Real Talk with Dr. Samir Desai. My name is Alyssa Harlow, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at MD2B Connect. I'm here with our co-founder, Dr. Samir Desai. The other members of our team that are part of our team but not here are Dan Morris, our Director of Client Services, Manish Savnis, our co-founder, and Ryan Downey, our VP of Editing Services. I wanted to briefly mention that our entire team is here for you. And if you have any questions, concerns, or need anything at all, please feel free to reach out to us directly. We want to help you, so please just let us know. As for tonight, we're very excited to have you all here. We're looking forward to answer some of the questions that you guys submitted on our Google form, as well as any questions that you guys have tonight live throughout the chat. We'll be going over some important topics about the residency match as well as your residency application. I did want to mention that you're welcome to share any questions that you may have in the chat. I know I said that before, but we definitely want to get to all of your questions. We're going to leave some time at the end to do so, so please feel free to do that. I did want to mention that you can make your questions anonymous if you'd like to do so. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Dr. Samir Desai.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, and a big welcome to all of our rotators. Welcome to our MD2B Connect Residency Real Talk. This is something that we do every month, and it's something that we do for our rotators. We consider it an honor and a privilege to have you be a part of our MD2B Connect program, and we never take that lightly. It's something very important to us. We know that you have a lot of choices, and so again, we're thrilled to have you, and you are all part of our MD2B Connect family. I know that I have met almost all of you. I know that there's a few of you who are new rotators to our program. Rest assured that I'll be reaching out to you very soon. I'm very eager to talk to you, to get to know you. And another feature of our MD2B Connect program is we love to get to know you personally. Of course, through these interactions, we learn all about the exciting things that you have done and will be doing. And when we get, very excited about all that. And we're here to support you every step of the way. We really don't view this as just a rotation. We view this as a long relationship where we want to be with you through this journey. We never want you to feel alone. You are not on an island. Anytime you have questions, concerns, you're not sure what to do, you just need some insight, never hesitate to reach out to us. Many of you already have my direct number. Those of you whom I have yet to meet, you'll have my contact information soon enough, so you can always feel free to text or call, and we can have a chat to discuss your personal situation. Now, we provide support in different ways. So this webinar is another example of how we support you, but we have lots and lots of resources to help provide guidance, up-to-date guidance. And those include such things as our website. So you all have visited our MD2B Connect website. You may not have visited our sister website, which is thesuccessfulmatch.com. So I encourage all of you to visit thesuccessfulmatch.com because there's a lot of useful information there. So we have a lot of resources there, including an extensive blog that goes into just about every aspect of the residency application process. And it's meant to be a complement to the book, The Successful Match, which you have or will be getting very, very soon. And so books take a little long to publish, but blog posts we can update more frequently. So as new and breaking information comes out, we do include that in our blog. So check out that blog as well as our podcast on the successfulmatch.com website. Now today what we're going to do is talk about some important aspects of the residency match with a focus on some of the things that we should be doing right now here in late May of 2023 to put ourselves in a great position to reach our goals later. So we'll do a little bit of that, but the bulk of what we're going to be doing in this webinar is answering your questions because many of you submitted some excellent questions, and I want to make sure that we get through those as well as any questions that you submit today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you some slides, and then we will start with that. Give me just a second here.
Yeah, and while you're pulling that up, Dr. Desai, I did want to mention that we do have a YouTube channel as well where we post videos of our previous webinars. We also have a lot of informational videos as well as our podcasts on there. So I highly recommend checking out our YouTube channel as there's some good resources there for you as well.
Okay, so Alyssa, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Let us know in the chat if you can't see the screen, or if you can, please let us know.
Okay, so let's get into this. So as we said, we are here in late May. We are knocking on the door of June 2023. So let's start by talking about what are some of the things that we need to be doing right now. So the first thing I want to talk about is researching programs. So many of you are applying to specialties like internal medicine or family medicine, pediatrics. These are specialties that have lots and lots of programs. And it's going to be important for us to research those programs for a variety of reasons. We need to find out which programs we're going to apply to. We need to learn about what these programs have to offer. We need to think about who we are and what interests us and how we fit with these programs. And all of those things are going to be crucial for us to put together an application that communicates fit to these residency programs. Now, in these specialties, there are hundreds of programs. And so if we wait towards September, when we submit our application to research these programs, it is such a big job. It's going to be very difficult to do your due diligence and do justice to your program review if we let this precious time that we have right now get away from us. So one of the things that I want you to do is budget some time regularly to research these programs. If you take the 500 or 600 internal medicine programs that are out there and you start to review a small number on a regular basis, before you know it, you will have covered a lot, if not all of those programs by the time September comes. So researching programs really needs to begin now. And this is not an easy thing because you all are so busy. You're doing rotations, you're some cases preparing for step exams, you're putting your application together. There are a lot of things going on. So you just need to be very deliberate and intentional about creating a little bit of time to do this program review. Now, what else do we need to be working on? We need to be thinking about the ERAS application. We're going to be talking a bit more about that here in just a minute. And we can start working on different aspects of this application even now. The hardest part, arguably, about the application are your descriptions. So these are description fields that you are going to have to complete for every experience you decide to include in your application. And you have a character limit for those description fields. Those have to be carefully crafted to make maximum impact. Residency program directors look at those descriptions very carefully as they make decisions on whom to interview. So you can begin working not only on the ERAS descriptions, but other aspects of the ERAS application, even right now. We also have to be thinking about our letters of recommendation. We want to think about who to ask, who's going to write these letters, and we need to start asking for these letters of recommendation. In some cases, we can do that because we may have finished some US clinical experience by this point. In other cases, there may be forthcoming experiences that obviously will have to wait for your letter of recommendation request, but we need to start thinking about what our letter of recommendation plan is going to be. And remember that we can ask for as many letters of recommendation as you want. You can upload many, many letters of recommendation. Of course, you can't send programs any more than 4 letters of recommendation. So there is a maximum number that can be sent, but you can upload as many as you want, and you can pick and choose from the letters that you've uploaded. Now, with that in mind, we are aiming to have the strongest possible letters uploaded on our behalf. And we need to think about how we can do that. Well, the chief means by doing that is, of course, related to your clinical performance. Since most of these letters are going to be coming from people who have seen your clinical performance, the strongest letters are going to come from those who have performed well. So everything that you can do to show your best abilities is going to help translate into that letter that you seek. Now, beyond that, there are things that we can do to help our letter writers write the best possible letter. The attendings that I have met over the years, all across the country, doesn't matter if it's academic attendings like myself at a university program, community hospital attending, an attending in practice as an outpatient physician. All of these physicians want to support their students in the residency application process. They would like to write the best possible letter. Now, there are going to be things that are going to be far more fresh in your mind than in the letter writer's mind. And for that reason, most of us are very receptive to having our students help us write the best possible letter. Now, for more information on how you can be an active participant in helping your preceptor or attending write that type of letter, I would encourage you all to read the Letters of Recommendation chapter in the Successful Match book. That chapter is chock full of strategies that will allow you to help your attending reach that very coveted goal. What else should we be doing? We need to be thinking about some of the documents that are not all under our control. So we have to rely on other parties, right, to complete some of the documents that are going to be components of our residency application. And that includes some documents produced by your medical school. So we need to connect with our medical school to figure out what that process is. For example, your MSPE. Schools all across the world have differing policies on how that document is generated. And we need to inquire with the medical school to understand what that process is going to be and to do that early because we don't want any delays related to getting that done. And finally, we have to be thinking and working on networking. This is something that's very, very important, has been important for years, but has become increasingly important as competition for residency programs and positions has increased. And so networking is something that we need to make a vital part of our regular plan here. So I recommend that people think about networking and put into place some actions related to that on a weekly basis, preferably multiple days during the week, so you can meet people who have ties to different residency programs, and that by meeting these people and developing the relationships, you will have some of them, and hopefully most of them, if not all, be willing to advocate for you at these programs so that residency programs do not overlook you. And the reason why this is so important is that every year these programs are receiving record-breaking numbers of applications, and it can be hard for them to decide whom to interview. And so networking allows your application to be noticed. So it's something that I encourage all of you to take part in. Let's go over some important dates. So we're talking about the ARAS system, and it's about to open, right? We're here on May 25th. In June, it's going to open. We're going to be able to get tokens to get things started. Remember that September is obviously a key month for us. We know that September 6th is when we can begin submitting applications to programs. We also know that September 27th is when programs can start reviewing our applications. A common question that I get asked is there any advantage to submitting our application earlier in September? And there is no advantage as it relates to getting interviews, meaning somebody who turns their application in on September 9th does not get greater consideration for interviews than someone who turns it in on September 22nd. That being said, one reason why you might like to get your application in earlier is it allows you to move on to other things that you need to do in this process. So of course that means preparing for your residency interviews, which can take time, and of course all the networking that you're doing. But it's not worth it to submit your application early in September if you have that opportunity to make it even more compelling with the extra time that you have in that month of September before September 27th. So it ends up being, of course, a personal decision of when you submit that application, but there's no advantage, as I said, to submitting it earlier if you're thinking that's going to get you more interviews, because all of these applications submitted in this time period are received as a single batch. September 15th is the day that NRMP registration opens. And so you can go to the NRMP website and take care of that. Now, as far as researching programs, I think that this is so important that we have a separate slide for this. And what are we trying to do when we research programs? There's a variety of things that we're trying to accomplish, but one of the things that we're trying to do is to identify those programs that are IMG friendly. Now, how do we do that, and what are we trying to do? So we're not trying to only identify IMG friendly programs. We're trying to categorize programs into what I call tiers of IMG friendliness. And that means that we're trying to ascertain which programs are very friendly to our situation, which programs are not so friendly, meaning they can be IMG friendly, but some may be more friendly to our profile and some may be less friendly. And that helps you decide which programs to apply to. It also helps you decide which programs you want to spend more time networking with. If there's a program that is in your high level of friendliness, and that might include programs where there's a high percentage of IMGs in the program, people who may be from your home country or even your medical school, and residency selection criteria that match who you are in terms of such things as your USMLE scores, your YOG, your USCE, and so forth. And so this is what we are trying to do, and how we do that, we use different resources. So we obviously have residency program websites that we can look at. We have such tools as Residency Explorer. We have the AMA Frida website. We even have our own website at MD2B Connect, where we have a section for IMG-friendly programs. I'd like to talk about that for a moment. Alyssa has been playing an instrumental role in helping us develop that part of our website. Alyssa, do you want to comment a little bit about IMG-friendly programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we created the IMG Friendly Residency Program tool as a free resource for you guys to use. And basically that resource contains the following information. So you'll have the program and the website, the link to take you directly there, as well as the percentage of IMGs in the program, the USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 CK score requirements, if any, as well as any clinical experience requirements, graduation year cutoff requirements, and what types of visas, if any, that they offer. So this is all available to you on our website. If you go to our U.S. Clinical Experience tab, you'll see that we have underneath that our IMG-friendly residency programs tab. And right now, we currently have internal medicine, family medicine, neurology, pediatrics, pathology, and psychiatry. And we hope to grow this list in the future, but we are working on it all the time, making sure, it's trying to be updated and give you those programs numbers for your own use. So that's just a little bit about that. I did also want to mention that I'm going to be dropping some links in the chat for you to use about some other resources we have for IMG-friendly programs, but I highly recommend checking out that resource on our website. So I will pass it over back to you, Dr. Desai.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. With respect to researching programs, I mentioned earlier that you want to try to do a little bit of this on a regular basis. I recommend researching 3 to 4 programs per day. If you do that, let's say you research 4 programs per day starting now. So from now until September, if you did the math, you would basically get through about 500 programs. And that doesn't sound as daunting, right? When you're breaking it up into small pieces like this. And what are you trying to do when you research these programs? Well, there's a lot of information on these program websites. You can learn about their criteria for residency selection. You can view their application requirements. You can learn about the different features of the program, as I mentioned before, to assess your fit with that program. And one other thing that you can do is you can see how you may be able to engage with the program in other ways. So ever since the pandemic, residency programs have been trying to showcase their training by letting prospective applicants explore their programs in different ways. So in addition to creating videos that they place on their website, sometimes they have meet and greets, sometimes they have applicants invited for lectures or conferences. More and more programs are on social media, be it Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and you can follow them on these platforms and you can become aware of what they are showcasing and you can join those things. It's a great way to learn about the program in more depth, way beyond what's present on their program website. And in some cases, your attendance at these different events may be what is needed to secure an interview. I have seen that program directors have invited people at certain events. Every single person that has attended the event has received an interview. And so you never know when you might find yourself in that situation. But even if that doesn't happen, the knowledge that you're gaining from these events can be used in powerful ways to advance your case to get an interview at that program or to maximize your performance when you actually have that interview because you have shown that you have an interest in their program by attending those events. So please do start to visit these program websites so you can benefit from that. Now, so much of what we are going to accomplish over the next 3-4 months as we put our application together is going to be through that ARAS system. And I would encourage all of you to become familiar with the tools and resources on that website. There's a lot there, and they're going to release more information with time. So as we're ending the 2023 season and starting the 2024 season, some new materials already shown up on the website. There will be more information to come. So periodically visiting this website to stay current on what is there is vital. You can learn all about the MyERAS system using their user guide. You can learn about which specialties and programs are participating in the ARAS system. There are residency applicant worksheets so that you can work on putting your application together. So there is a lot there, and I would really encourage you to do a deep dive on their website. And now we're going to go into your questions. As I said, we had a lot of people submit questions, and we're going to take them one at a time. And while we go through this, Alyssa is also going to be sharing with you some important resources in the chat. As I said before, we have a lot of information, not just in the Successful Match book, but on our blog, on our podcasts, and different other sources so that you can have those easily available to you to dive deeper into these topic areas. So one of the questions we were asked today is for the 2024 match, can we register in NRMP now or wait until September 15th? So let's talk about that for a minute. So if your specialty participates in ARAS, you will be using the ARAS system to put your application together, all the different components of the application. Now, just doing your work in ARAS doesn't mean you're done for the purposes of matching. So getting your work done and applying to programs in September and interviewing with programs, all of that are parts of the process to match. But the governing body that oversees the match and administers the match is the NRMP. So in order to participate in the match, you also have to register for the match through the NRMP. So you need to do two things, and that's get access to the ARAS system, get plugged in with that, but also register for the match at the NRMP website. And you can do that typically every year. That starts on September 15th. So September 15th, you can do that. You don't have to do it exactly on September 15th. You can do it after that. There is a fee that they will charge if you don't do it by the end of January. So you want to make sure that you do it before then. Every year, there are some people who don't realize that this is something that needs to be done. And then after they get through the interview season, the residency program has a hard time finding them because they don't have an NRMP ID number. So when you register for the NRMP match, you get an ID number, and the program needs that ID number in order to rank you. So you do not want to be in a situation where that is not available because it will obviously affect their ability to match you. Plus, it's not a good look, right? Even if you don't have an ID number, it makes them look at you as somebody who's not well informed of the whole process. So get that number taken care of on or after September 15th. We had another question about gaps in the CV. What is the appropriate manner to address gaps in your CV that may be due to personal reasons? So it is important to think about gaps in your timeline. I have met residency program directors who scrutinize residency applications in such a way that they create a timeline of your events based on what they can glean from that application. And if there's a lengthy period of time in which what you're doing is not clear, they've identified a gap. And so what you want to do is try to account for the gaps. Now, if you were in medical school and there was a gap in medical school, generally that gap is going to be shared with residency programs in the MSPE. Because if you're following the standard format of the MSPE, there is a section of the MSPE that asks medical schools, did the medical student have to extend their medical school education? And if the medical school says yes, there may be a bit of explanation that is provided in the MSPE. Quite often, the explanations that's provided by the medical school is inadequate, or what I would say lacking in information. So that gap needs to be addressed in your residency application. So there is a section in your ARAS application that asks the applicant, was your medical school education extended? If you mark yes, you will have the opportunity to provide an explanation for that gap or extension in your medical school education. And so that is something that you want to do so you can provide more clarity and reassure programs that whatever it is that happened that led to that extension or gap is not something that they should worry about when you become a resident in your program. Now, these gaps can cause a lot of stress and anxiety in applicants because it's not always obvious how to address the gaps, what to say, how to phrase it. And these are some things that if you are worried about, if it's keeping you up at night, don't hesitate to reach out to me and we can discuss that on a very personal level, a level that's very specific to what you have been through. And I can provide you with a lot of advice and guidance on how to address that. Moving on to another question. This has to do with letters of recommendation. The question is, when is it preferable to remind the attending physician or preceptor about uploading or sending the letter of recommendation? So with regards to letters of recommendation, I want to first talk about the ideal time to ask for that letter, because many of you are currently rotating or will be rotating in other experiences before you apply. The ideal time to ask for a letter of recommendation is in your last week of the rotation, in the last few days, because that is when you reach your peak level of performance. If you think about a 4-week rotation, there's an adjustment period, and that adjustment period can go on for quite a bit. It might take you a couple of weeks to get comfortable and confident in your new surroundings, have that understanding of the processes that are occurring in the practice and how you can contribute and be productive. And so by the time you get into the 4th week, you're feeling so much better about yourself than you were in that first week. You know how things work, and you are reaching your peak for that 4-week duration. And so since those memories are fresh in the attending's mind, that is the right time to ask for a letter of recommendation. Now, let's assume that you've asked for that letter of recommendation and the attending has said, absolutely, I would love to write you a strong letter of recommendation. Then your job is to go into the system and assign that doctor as one of your letter writers. And then that doctor will receive the information that he or she needs to ultimately upload that letter. Now, when should you follow up with that doctor? So in the US, it's customary is to give at least 3 to 4 weeks to an attending to complete their work, to write the letter and then to upload the letter. So if 3 or 4 weeks have passed and it hasn't happened, now is the time to reach out and remind the attending physician to gently check in and see where things are. Now remember, your attending physicians, they want to support their students. If they've agreed to write you a letter, it's because they believe in you. And so they know that this is an important part of what they have to do to support you. After all, there were people in their corner who wrote letters for them. Now, it is true that these attending physicians are busy, but 3 to 4 weeks is a reasonable amount of time. Now, if you are doing a rotation in August or September, you may be thinking to yourself, my goodness, if I have to give them 3 to 4 weeks, that means my letter could be delayed. And so there are attendings who, if they are aware of your situation and considerations related to the timing of the residency application, will be willing to accelerate that process and get things done earlier. Now, that's of course going to be on a case-by-case basis, but you have to factor in important consideration, and that is when you ask for that letter, how well are you performing? Because if you're asking for that letter very, very early and you're still in that adjustment period, then the attending may very well agree to write that letter early, but will it be the strongest letter that it could be if you waited another week or two. So you kind of have to balance that. It's not an easy thing. But September 27th, right, is the first day that programs can see these applications. Uh, in September, sometimes there's a longer ECFMG processing time for these letters. So when the attending uploads the letter, there might be a lag period of about, sometimes it can get up to about 2 weeks. So if you can get these letters in by around the September 12th to 15th time period, you can be very confident that everything is going to be in the system. So please factor all of that in as you think about your letter recommendation requests and timing. Now, is it okay to remind the preceptor about this with email? Absolutely, it's okay. It's accepted practice. It's not anything that we would look down upon. So you don't have to worry about being afraid to send them an email. Now, you do have to consider what the best way to reach that particular attending is. So one of the things that you could ask an attending after you make your letter request is, what's the best way to keep in touch with you? And you may already know that from the 4 weeks you spent with the attending. You may know that he or she prefers to be texted, or maybe they're more into that email. So whatever it is, their preferred way of communicating, it's good to know that up front, and then to follow up with them with that preferred method. But there's nothing wrong with sending a follow-up email. We had a question about the personal statement. The question was how to deal with the personal statement. And that is a very broad-based question. And we can devote an entire webinar to how to deal with the personal statement. In fact, in previous cycles, we have spent almost an entire episode on the personal statement, and we probably will be doing that again here soon enough. Now, one thing that I would refer you all to is the Successful Match book. There is an extensive chapter on the personal statement, a very long chapter, which goes into the evidence of what program directors and members of the residency selection committee are looking for in these personal statements. So this is something that's crucial reading, and it's going to help you develop your personal statement in different stages in time. You're also going to have examples of personal statements that residency programs would look at and say are particularly compelling. The way I would view this process of developing a compelling personal statement is that I would do it in chunks. So it's not something that you want to save right till the end. You want to be working on it periodically, because there's going to be some work that you do, some time that you step away from it, and then when you step away for a few days or even a week and you look at it again, it's going to be with a different eye, a different perspective, and your statement will be far better for it because you're going through a process that's going to take you weeks and months to do. Now, what I would say to you is you're not trying to develop perfection right from the start, right? A lot of people will sit down and say, okay, I should be able to develop what I think is a perfect statement right now in the next 3 hours. It's a process. Okay? You're trying to get it better and better and better. And that will happen if you set aside enough time to devote to it. Initially, you're going to want to do some brainstorming where you think about the things that you've done, the qualities that you've demonstrated throughout your career as a medical student, as a graduate, as a physician. You need to think about the contributions you've made. You need to think about what you've done in your home country, what you've done here. So in that chapter on the personal statement in the Successful Match book, we have a series of questions that we present to you for you to answer, to brainstorm, so that you can identify content that you might like to include in your personal statement. So rather than try to write everything and get it just right in one sitting, you want to go through that process, right? Start with the awareness of what residency program directors are looking for, then move it towards some brainstorming, do some free writing on those different questions that we have in that chapter, for example. And as you move through that progression, it's going to take shape. And so that's how you want to sort of look at this personal statement. And if you break it down into those smaller pieces, it's not going to feel as daunting. And I know Alyssa is going to should be sharing also some blog posts that we've written about the personal statement. One particular blog post goes into how you can write program-specific personal statements. We had some questions that were submitted about research. One of the questions is, what is the value of research and research fellowships? So research has different value depending upon the specialty. There are some specialties where it's almost an absolute requirement. There are other specialties where it can certainly enhance your application, but people definitely do match without doing research. Now, there are so many benefits of research. Many IMGs that I meet, and as well as US medical students, uh, haven't done research before. So one great thing about getting involved in research before you apply is it allows you to see what research is all about, to try it on, to explore it. And some people through that process have discovered that this is something that they want to do in their career. So that's part of why you want to get into research, but the benefits go beyond that as it relates to the residency selection process. So many people view research as I've got to get published and presented. And certainly when you publish and present, it shows programs that you're able to take a project and bring it all the way from beginning all the way to end. And you have something very tangible that you've produced. And that's something that can then be included in your application. But even getting involved in research that doesn't lead to publication or presentation is something that is valued by most programs. In residency, programs will have you do some form of scholarly activity. Often it's research. It's not always research, but you having a skill set in research shows programs that you can be somebody who can get involved in research opportunities that their program has. And that can be something that is attractive. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to be published and presented to be considered by program, but research is another way of just showing how well-rounded you are. And programs are looking for people who are well-rounded. Another benefit of research is you get to work with somebody who might be connected to different programs, especially if your research is with people here in the United States. And so the mentor that you're working with, or the mentors that are supervising you, are people that you'll develop stronger and stronger relationships with through the research process. And they might be able to advocate for you. Now, what about certificate training courses? So there are different courses that applicants can take part in, and those courses can be valuable for our professional development. They can be courses that are geared clinically, they could be courses that have a research emphasis. If you're somebody that doesn't have easy access to research, for example, whether it's in your home country or here in the US, you're finding it hard to find that, you can take training courses in the different aspects of the research process and possibly earn some sort of certificate. And that is something that can go in the residency application. So if a program were to ask you, tell me about your research experience, and you unfortunately weren't in a situation to take part in research, you can point to some of the skills that you picked up, perhaps through a training course. Another question related to research is a research-heavy CV might be helpful for those looking to match a university program. However, how much does this hurt the chances of matching at community programs and therefore reduce the chance of matching overall? Now, certainly there are some residency programs in every specialty that are looking for people with very strong backgrounds in research. These are our so-called research-oriented programs. Now, we tend to think that community programs are not going to be so excited about us if we have significant research. And that's not necessarily true, because many community programs have a lot going on in the research world. And so just being a community program doesn't mean there isn't research going on there. There may not be the same degree of research that is going on in a university program, but they may have specific initiatives that they're working on. They may be launching new programs. They may be building their departments out, and they're looking for people who can work with faculty to further their research mission. Now, how you're considered at a community program, if you have a heavy research background, also depends upon how you craft your application. So if you write a personal statement that's going to be more oriented to a community program, and in that statement, you are writing about how your involvement in research is going to help you or practice high quality care within the confines of that community residency program, well, then you're making an argument of how your skill set can benefit them. So, how you package your application also matters here as well. But I can tell you story after story of people with research heavy backgrounds who have matched and thrived at community programs. Let's talk about preference signaling. So what is preference signaling? It's also known as program signaling. It's something that's relatively new, started in about 2020. And what it is an opportunity for the applicant to signal deep interest in some programs within that specialty to which they are applying. Now, the reason that it came to be was so that programs could have a sense of who's deeply interested in them. So earlier in our webinar, we talked about how these programs are receiving record-breaking numbers of applications, and they're having a hard time knowing whom to interview. And when they're trying to decide whom to interview, they're looking at, what is the fit between this applicant and our program? And part of the fit that they kind of factor in is geographic preference and preference in the program. In other words, what is your level of interest in the program? And that's always been a criteria that's important to programs, because if a program receives 3,000 applications and they're going to interview 300 to 400 people, they want to make sure that there's a large number of people within that 300 to 400 member group that has a serious interest in their program. Because if they don't, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to be at risk for going unfilled in the match. And so just like applicants are worried about not matching, residency programs are also concerned about not matching their class. So they're using everything at their disposal to try to decide who's seriously interested. Now, they do make mistakes here. They look at applications and sometimes fail to recognize that certain applicants have a deep interest in their program. So your ability to signal a program, to let them know that I have a deep interest, makes them consider you more deeply. So you will have the opportunity to signal programs through your application. In years past, it was part of a supplemental application. This year, they have folded preference signaling into the main application. But depending upon the specialty to which you're applying, it could be as few as 3 signals you can send, or as many as 30 signals that you can send. And the signals that you send need to be carefully developed. And we're going to be talking more about this aspect of the application in the webinars to come. But the question here is regarding the preference signaling, especially for a specialty that is implementing it first time this year, what is the best approach? So the first thing to think about in this scenario is, what is the program's philosophy on preference signaling. So not all programs will actually participate in preference signaling. So those programs that will participate in it will make themselves known to ERAS. And then you will find in the ERAS system the list of programs that are participating in it. Now, once you know which programs are participating in it, now you have to decide, are you going to signal them? Because as an applicant, you don't have to signal them. Now, I tell people it's always best to use your signals because the data that we have from the last 3 years of preference signaling shows that programs seriously factor this in. Some percentage of programs invite everybody that signals them. So I tell applicants to use your signals. Now, how do you use your signals? Which programs do you signal? So part of that is based on how well you match up to the program and where you are interested in. So you have to factor in, again, that program's level of IMG friendliness, how your profile matches up with what they're looking for in terms of their screening and selection process and their eligibility criteria. And using all of that and your background and how you fit with that program, you can start to make a short list of potential programs to signal. Now, another thing you can pay attention to is any wording on the website of the program that is devoted to preference signaling. Some programs will come right out and say, we are going to seriously take a look at everybody who signals us, and people who don't signal us are going to be at a serious disadvantage. Well, if you see words like that, and that is a program where you think you have a great shot at, and you feel that your profile fits well with them, well, that's got to be a factor that you've got to take into consideration as you develop your preference signaling plan. So we're going to talk more about this in future webinars. Another question related to this is, if geographic preference is accepted, can we use our allotted signals towards programs in different areas, but which we are targeting? I have to say that I want to answer this question. I'm not entirely sure if I understand it, but I will say that geographic preferences are another part of the ERAS application. So with the previously, when we had the supplemental application, we had preference signaling in it, we had geographic preferences in it, we had meaningful experiences in it. All of that now has migrated into the main application. So you're going to have an opportunity to indicate geographic regions of the country that you would prefer to train in. And again, we will cover that as well as preference signaling in the next few months. We had a question about audition rotations, and audition rotations can be done at different times of the year. And one of our rotators wanted to know up to what months in the fall and winter is it advisable to do audition rotations. So that really depends, but ideally you would like to do audition rotations at a time that occurs before a program sends out all of their interview spots, or fills all of their interview spots, I should say. So since the process of inviting people for interviews can start as early as October, it would be nice to be able to do an audition rotation before that happens. Now, programs in different specialties, so specialties have different timings for extending interviews. Some will start in early October, some programs won't invite until November. So to some extent, you want to be aware of what is your specialty's practice related to the timing of interviews. But even if you do an audition rotation in the fall and winter, that can still be very helpful, but it can be helpful only really for that program, because anything that you get from that audition rotation, you're not going to be able to put in your residency application, which has already been submitted in September. So if you were hoping to get a letter of recommendation from that audition rotation, you can still get it, but it's going to be coming very late in the process. Now, if you're doing the audition rotation to get an interview at that particular institution, that can still happen in the fall and winter. Even at programs that have filled their interview spots, sometimes program directors will open up a slot for a rotator. So there is value in doing it in the fall and winter, but it's hard to determine a value at any specific program unless they're willing to share that information with you, or you have some inside knowledge from somebody that is a friend or a contact at that program. Okay, next question, which program should I apply to? Again, we kind of touched upon many aspects of this with our residency program review with regards to IMG friendliness, what you're looking for in a program, and so on and so forth. We had a question about residency interview. What are some tips for acing the residency interview? So in our book, The Successful Match, there are over 150 pages of detailed interview prep. There are also multiple blog posts on the successfulmatch.com website on different aspects of residency interviewing. There's also the podcast where I go through different residency interview questions and I give some examples of how you can answer them. And if you stay with us in these monthly webinars, we are going to get to residency interview season, and we're going to dive deep into the residency interview and talk about what it takes to ace those interviews. So that is something that you can expect to hear from us as we move into September, October. One rotator asked about mistakes. What are some common mistakes or pitfalls to avoid during the residency application process? One mistake that I would say is the timing of everything and making sure you use your time wisely through this process and try to move different aspects of the residency application forward by allocating some time on a regular basis. Because if you try to save everything to the end, it just becomes very overwhelming. So a little bit of time that you put together on a regular basis, you move forward, and you also get a little bit of peace of mind knowing that you're making progress towards your ultimate goal. Another mistake to avoid is not doing enough networking. Networking is so important that you have to spend some time to create a networking plan and do a little bit of networking where you're reaching out to people on a regular basis, because you'd like to have as many people as possible ready to help you in October after you submit your application. And with that, we come to the end of the slides, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time for any additional questions, Alyssa, that we may have received during this webinar to this point.
Yeah, so up to this point, we just have one question, but I did want to reiterate that if you guys have any questions now, please feel free to put them in the chat. We're happy to answer them for you. We do set aside a little bit of time for this. So I'll go ahead and start with the first question that we received. And the question is, related to gaps on the ERAS CV, as they're limiting the number of experiences to 10, if there is a list, I think what they're trying to say is if we list 10 non-contiguous experiences with it, will it be interpreted that there are gaps? Or should we address that in the reason for leaving experience section to provide continuity?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. So the ERAS application this year has changed after 20 years of not much change. We have a significant change, and that is the number of experiences that we can include in our residency application is now to a maximum of 10. And so we have to look at all of our experiences and make some hard decisions on which experiences to include. In doing so, it's possible that there may be some time that is unaccounted for. That is something that residency program directors are going to be encountering for the first time, because prior to this, every experience that an applicant had could be put into the application as a separate experience. And so it was easier to address gaps. Now we have to be a bit more strategic about it Certainly, if a gap is going to be known to a program because it's present or disclosed in another document, this is something that you have to factor into your decision making. There's another field which is for impactful experiences, where an applicant can write about things that have happened which have been a challenge or an obstacle that they faced, which has led to hardship. And sometimes those things are what causes us to have gaps. And that can be another place to highlight that. And remember, there's also a personal statement section, not a section, but the personal statement, I should say, where a gap can also be addressed. Now, I would say to our rotators that if you have a gap and you're worried about this, given that there's a change in the ARS system, to reach out to me individually and we can discuss your situation.
Okay. And we just got a question related to that. So they're asking, how long is a gap considered? So I spent 5 months preparing for my steps. Is it a red flag in the match?
Yeah, so 5 months is not a terribly long period of time. One thing that I would say is to ask yourself if there was anything else that you were doing, even on a small scale. So many times when I talk to applicants and we talk about gaps, and someone tells me, I was studying for one of my steps, and then I ask them, okay, were you doing anything else? And at first they might say no. And then when I probe a little further, I might find out that they were uh, going to their church or their temple, and they were participating in some activities. Maybe they were teaching youth at the church, or maybe they were doing some sort of volunteer work related to it that maybe they don't think about as a substantial activity, but they were doing something related to that. Or they were involved still in a research project. Now, maybe they weren't going to the lab every day. Maybe they weren't doing as much with the research, but maybe there was periods of time, even though they might be very short, where they were contributing to perhaps writing of some research or doing some background literature. So there's things that could be going on in these so-called gaps that could account for some of that time. So I spent a lot of time probing people for that. But and this brings me to another point. If you're going to be going through a period of prolonged study, because I know not all of our rotators are applying this year, it's a good idea to be doing something else during your period of study so that you're not introducing a gap. And that is something that's good advice for those of you who are a little bit further out from applying. But for those of you who are applying this year, I would say that anything that's more than 3 or 4 months will be good to try to account for. Now, that being said, we have limited ways now to account for some of these things. So if you're out there and you have some of those gaps, uh, I would recommend you to reach out to me so I can discuss your particular situation a little bit better.
Yeah, so going along with what you just discussed, we actually have another question similar to this topic. And it says, if you spent 2 years working in a different field of healthcare during a gap or a different career before deciding to take the steps and pursue the match, is that a red flag? And if so, how can we overcome that?
So working in a different type of medicine, whether it's a different specialty or different aspect of healthcare, perhaps this is before you became a physician, uh, is not necessarily a red flag. It actually can be something that is received very, very well. We've had people coming through our program that have worked as nurses in their home country or even here in the US, people who have been uh, teaching in some sort of medical capacity. We've had a lot of people with all kinds of careers. What's really important is how you present the work and the position that you are in. And when I say how to present that, to carefully present it in such a way that you can show that the skills and qualities you developed in that position would be transferable to when you become a resident. And so I would not necessarily view that as a red flag, but I would view it as an opportunity to show the program that that period of time where you had significant growth in a different position is going to make you a better physician.
All right. So that basically concludes all of the questions that we had in the group chat. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and close for the night. I just want to say thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to join us for this webinar. We truly try to give you as much information as possible and make this worth your time. Like I said earlier today, you're part of our MD2B Connect family, and we truly deeply care about you and we want you to succeed. So please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. Our whole team is here for you no matter what. Even if you're just, stressed out about something or, you want some actual match advice, we're here to help you for that. So please feel free to reach out to us for anything. And with that, if you are interested in viewing our resources on our own website, you're also welcome to view our sister company's website, The Successful Match. We have great resources there, as well as on our YouTube channel, our Instagram, and our Facebook page. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and I will pass it off to you, Dr. Desai.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I echo everything that Alyssa just said. We truly care very deeply for all of you. We want to see you succeed. We want to hear that excitement in your voice on match day in 2024 if you're applying in the cycle. We want to know that you did it, that you matched, you realized your dream here in the US. We want to be able to support you so that we can get you, help you get to that point. And so I don't want any of you to hesitate to reach out to us because we are here. It's not just about doing a rotation. We really want to help you develop into the professional that you want to be. We want to provide the mentorship that you need. And that's what the MD2B Connect program is all about. And so we thank you for being part of our MD2B Connect family.
All right. So I think with that said, we will head off for the night. Thank you guys so much, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.
Take care. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.